destruction of everything else. And what I'm going to do today is to present some of the reasons why we do this and the consequences. Now, I have here, if you'll notice, two charts to begin. Each are labeled poverty and biodiversity. If you look at this chart, you will see something first. What will you see? You'll see a place called the Aral Sea. In the Aral Sea, you will see sand and fishing boats. And you're going to say, gee, what are real fishing boats doing in a desert? Well, here we see a good example of poverty. And I'm going to give you the examples of poverty in a minute. Then down here, we have an example of the rosy periwinkle. This represents biodiversity. Why? Because this particular plant has drugs against cancer, AIDS, and leukemia, and it's found in the tropics. Here we have another interesting organism. This is a newly discovered beetle found about 2 to 3 years ago at the canopy of the rainforest. Now, all these three things have something in common. Now, if we look over here on this chart, you will see just the opposite. We have here a big periwinkle, rosy periwinkle. Underneath, we still have that same picture of the desert, of what used to be the Aral Sea, and then we see our friend here, the beetle. Now, what I'm going to do today is explain this phenomenon to you, and I'm going to talk to you about biodiversity, what it is, and how we are destroying it, and how we are relating it to poverty. And as you'll see, I am not only going to talk about poverty, financial poverty, but of poverty of values and common sense. And I think what I have here today will really astound you. However, what I want to do first is give you some definitions. And what I have here is the actual definition of biodiversity taken from the book, The Diversity of Life, by the world-renowned naturalist Edwin O. Wilson. And he's the one that wrote The Diversity of Life, as well as another book that just came out called Consilience. And I didn't get a chance to read it, but I'm sure it's quite interesting. I believe it has something to do with the environment. Now, let me read you biodiversity. Biodiversity is the variety of organisms considered at all levels, from genetic variants belonging to the same species through arrays of species to arrays of genera, families, and still higher taxonomic levels. And that includes the variety of ecosystems, and the ecosystems are the areas where life exists. Ecosystems include the non-living with the living, such as out here in Illinois. The living part of the ecosystems are the plants, the bacteria, and the fungi. The non-living are the wind, the rain, the rock, the land, things like this. Atmospheric pressure, those, by the way, are known as abiotic factors, which means they're non-living. Also, which comprise both the communities of organisms. The communities are all the different species living together, insects, birds, humans, mammals, etc., within a particular habitat and the physical conditions under which they live. Okay, so essentially, this is the definition of biodiversity. Now, let's take a look at the different types of life out there as the biologists have placed. Now they put them in order. Here we see a beautiful chart, which is sort of a pie chart, you might say, and this shows you what type of organisms are present. I want you to pay attention to this because this is very significant, the size of everything. It looks like a pie, okay? What we have here is, notice, everything in the orange, okay, takes up more than 50% of the entire circle. Okay? That means that most of the orange area is composed of one particular phylum of organisms called arthropods. And that includes insects, bees, millipedes, centipedes, spiders, ants, and damselflies, amongst others. Okay? That is the largest group. Hence, you see a big area. Okay, so that makes up over 50% of all the known life on the planet. Then we have the other animals, which make up about 25%. That includes birds and worms and a whole bunch of other organisms. And then we have plants. Roughly, there are about 248,000 known plant species. And then we have around 69,000 fungal species, 58,000 protists. And protista are these single-celled organisms, for the most part, which includes flagellates, things that swim with a little flagellum. It includes disease organisms such as malaria, It includes things like amoebas, includes similar things like that, and of course algae, of which are a very important part of the food chain. Also, we have prokaryotes, which include the bacteria. As of now, there's roughly 4,800 species of bacteria, but there are probably thousands, or if not millions, more to go. So these are the basic categories of life. And I should point out that, as I mentioned, the fungi, we have 69,000, and they're very important because they help decompose organisms as well as the bacteria. I should point out, though, folks, that there are a number of people who used to call me a fungus. I want to point that out now because they say, gee, Dave, you are a real fun guy. Okay, just thought I'd mention that. Now, one other thing we have here that I think you know is of interest, you see this centipede up there? Well, I got to mention this because this is the only thing that makes sense. You remember Imelda Marcus? She's the lady with the 2,000 pairs of shoes. Well, word had it that she was the reincarnation of one of these. Okay, I just thought I'd clarify. All right, now, let's continue with biodiversity. And before I continue, I'm going to play something for you that I will leave running until I get to the poverty section. Okay. What I'm going to do now is play you a tape, and I'm going to be speaking as this tape is going. This is a tape of the rainforest. During the rain. Now, this will be on throughout the whole session, most of it anyway. Just to emphasize, we're talking about biodiversity, okay? So now, let me break this down into total other species where you can see a little easier. Here we see a chart again of the plant species here, where we have roughly 248,000. And here we have different types. We have dicots, which include gymnosperms, these are the pome trees, and then we have the non-vascular plants here, as well as other groups, and monocots, which are also vascular plants. These include things like grasses and corn, things like this. And over here, we have, again, this is a chart with the total number of organisms according to size of the pie chart. Again, the insects represent the largest group here, and again, plants and fungi and other organisms. You can see right there. So this represents the biodiversity. Now, I'm going to get to poverty in a few minutes. I have here a chart, two pictures, which were given to me by a girl in one of my classes when I taught at the Columbia College up in Park City, which is a suburb of Waukegan. And if we see here, we see something very interesting. Up here, these are the forests of Peru. Aren't they beautiful? Okay, magnificent. She took this picture herself, and I just made a copy of it. Here we see birds. But these are not ordinary birds. These are macaws. Now, why am I showing you this? We've all seen birds, okay? It's just a poor bird, right? Not exactly. In a minute, these birds, which I consider priceless, are hunted because you can get $1,000 a piece for them, okay? And when some people who actually need money, especially in the tropics who are poor, they'll do anything to capture as many of these alive in order to make $1,000 a piece. And if this is in South America, $1,000 can go a long way, okay? And that's going to lead us to the poverty in a minute, and I will go on to that right now. Okay, let me show you now a little bit about poverty. And what do I mean by poverty? Well, first, what I'm going to do is, let's look at this chart. I'm going to define poverty, and this I got verbatim from the dictionary. It says poverty is the state of one who lacks the usual or socially acceptable amount of money or material goods. May cover a range from extreme want of necessities to an absence of material comfort. Okay? Now, I'm including in this category poverty of common sense and poverty of values. And this is actually where I intend to go today with this lecture, because I feel you should know a lot about these two other types of poverty. And I'm going to show you some pictures as well as about a 15 to 20-minute segment taken from a 2020 show about poverty, common sense, and values, and you'll see what I mean. Now, before I go on, I would like to give you the 3 definitions of environmental pollution. And 2 of these definitions are what I got from a child's joke book, a book called Smart Ass. Okay? Really brilliant definitions. Number 1, the contamination of Mother Nature by human nature. Isn't that great? Not bad for a children's joke book, right? Then we have this other one, the effluence of affluence. This to me is by far the best. What do we mean by affluence? Well, what's effluence, first of all? Anybody know? Effluence is garbage. And what's affluence? It means rich, wealth. So who has the most garbage, the poor person or the rich people? The rich people, because they buy more, they spend more, they use more, and of course everything they buy involves waste, right? That's why the richer you are, the more effluence you have. And this is why we suffer from a disease here in America and a lot of other countries where they have gobs of money, which is put to poor use. You know what disease we have? Affluenza. I didn't make that up. I wish I didn't have the intelligence to make that one up, but it's called affluenza. Okay, so here we suffer in America from affluenza. Now we're going to come to the least fanciest of these definitions, and this is mine. I did take time devising it. I've been using it for years. But this one is actually what we're going to talk about today, because I have concrete examples. Here, we're going to talk about the contamination of an ecosystem by the removal or addition of something. And this is a good definition, because what's an ecosystem? Well, an ecosystem is the area surrounding us, is where life lives. Of course, you have different types. You have ecosystems up in the Arctic. You even have ecosystems in the middle of the tropics, even at the bottom of the ocean. You also have ecosystems actually in your body, you might say, in your nose, ears, okay? You have ecosystems all over the place. And if we remove something or add something, we're going to be in trouble. Now, let me give you an example of removal. What are we removing in this case? Well, if you look around, what used to be right here where you were sitting? Trees, grass, animals, right? We removed it, okay? That's one thing, and yet what did we add? We added a building. But let's look at something even more insidious. You know, when we remove, we cut, chop, and dig, we take the trees out, and maybe we burn them for fuel wood or something like that, okay? We remove that. Now, what are we adding? Real simple. We're adding garbage into the air and into the water and into the land, okay? You've all heard of LA and Mexico City, I'm sure. What are they known for? The air pollution, right? I told you about the mayor of Los Angeles. I told you what he wanted to do to attract tourists. Put up a sign. Come to LA and see the air, right? And you can't deny that, because that's what you're going to do. So all over now, you can see, especially on smoggy days, we're adding stuff. And we're paying the price. We're paying the price in diseases and other things like that. Okay? Now, let's go back to some examples of poverty, of values. And I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to show you perhaps the most incredible situation I've ever seen in my life. And this one involves the poverty of common sense, mainly common sense. I have here a picture of the former Soviet Union, okay? This is the Soviet Union before it broke down in the 90s. Over here we have the Caspian Sea. Up here we have Moscow. Over here we have a place called the Aral Sea, A-R-A-L, Sea. Believe it or not, folks, I bet most of you never heard of it, but that was the 4th largest lake in the world, okay? It was the 4th largest lake in the world. Little Aral Sea. They used to fish 20,000 tons of fish a year, and they had many species which they would fish out. Now, what do they have? Well, because of stupidity, and I'm going to blame the U.S. a little bit for that, and I'll explain why, the Aral Sea, or most of it, looks like this. Interesting, isn't it? Right? Almost a desert. What kind of fish can you fish in the desert, folks? Well, if you look hard enough, you might be able to get a fish, And you know what type of fish you find in the desert? Land trout. Land. The only type you'll be able to get. Okay, so I don't think we're doing too well with land trout. But anyway, just never know, you know. Okay, so this situation occurred because, see, what happened was, this was a freshwater lake, and it was fed by two rivers, okay? The Dar-Sarya and another river. What happened was, what happened to the water in the river? Well, instead of the water going into the Aral Sea, it went into the cropland to grow what? Cotton. They wanted to raise cotton. So what happened was they cared more about raising the cotton because they had to somehow increase their economy, that they didn't pay any attention to the lake. And believe it or not, here we have the lake. It's more like a desert. Interesting, isn't it? How you can go from the opposite of a desert, which is an abundance of water, to all the way to a total desert with a place like this. Okay? And this is, of course, this involves three poverties. The poverty of money, the poverty of common sense, and the poverty of values. This took place under the communist regime when they, at the peak of the Soviet Union, while we were in the Cold War with them. And what happened was, you know, these countries would try to make a decent living by increasing their economy by doing anything they could, even if it destroyed the environment. However, as we see, the environment was destroyed, and it only impoverished the country, you see? And this was partially due, and again, folks, I don't want to blame us 100%, but I do blame us because we helped instill this. We were so busy building bombs and guns and all this other stuff that they had to build bombs and guns, and we're having this one-upmanship who can build more bombs and guns. Meanwhile, the people are starving and the environment's going downhill, okay? So this is why I say we have a lack of values. Now, let's see some more lack of values here. I have here another picture which I find to be quite amazing. And I took this from one of my books. And I'll show you, folks, I'm coming to the conclusion that just because you're rich doesn't mean you're smart. Here we see a picture where we see some individuals, and I believe this is in California, where a lot of people have more money than brains. Now, what do you see here? What kind of poverty here? Perhaps I should add poverty of brains, or in this case, common sense. Well, look what we have here. Very expensive homes, at least a couple $1 million a piece. I'm sure this is certainly no shack, right? A couple million, and we have a couple million here. These people built these homes on a cliff. What happened to that cliff? It was denuded, which means they cut down the trees and the plants. And what do you get? You get erosion. What's even worse, if you want a good view of the sea, why not build a house on a cliff? Boy, look at that beautiful sea, right? In fact, if you even want to be smarter, you have a baby boy, well, what else? You name him Cliff, right? Okay. Anyway, so what happens is, you get some rain, and bingo, the rain comes down, and look what happens. The rain comes down, and part of your house comes down, and then your insurance company, I don't think, will be too happy. But anyway, you get the idea. So here we also have poverty of values and common sense. See that? Now, I'm trying to show you good examples. Let's look at two more. And this really kind of got to me here. Folks, the best is yet to come. Oh, Genevieve, you are shooting, right? Good. Okay, here we got, I want to show you something. See what this is? I got this in an envelope the other day because evidently the mail people know who I am. You know, I'm on somebody's list for the environment. But I don't care because I use everything I get one way or another. I'm not going to pay to join organizations too much. I only join two of them. These are the ones that I can afford, which I really like. But here we have a good example of what's happening. I couldn't resist getting this on transparency. It says here, this is an envelope, and in it, you know, they want money to help save the rainforest. Here, is the American home making them homeless? What do we mean by them? First of all, we mean the indigenous Indians who live either in South America or Philippines or somewhere else. Okay? Here we see the animals, which are represented by the monkey and the bear and the frog, which I love. And over here, we see the plants. And these plants are very important. They're not only important because they give off oxygen, take in carbon dioxide, but perhaps the future of the human race is in these plants. Why? Because of the drugs that we can get from them, okay? Many of the drugs, including aspirin, by the way, originated from plant material, folks, okay? So, if we keep cutting the trees down, we're helping to wipe out the future medicinal factories here, because it's the plants that have. There was a very good book that I just finished called, it was called Medicine Quest by Mark J. Plotkin. And he was telling us about all the plants that are out there, and even interesting things like using leeches to get medicines from, and plants. And you know how we know that these plants help us? Assuming there are all the thousands of them out there, because we follow the animals such as monkeys. Monkeys have taught us which plants are medicinal. I bet you didn't know that, did you? How do we know that monkeys know that these plants are medicinal? Well, according to the book, he says you follow these monkeys around in their natural habitat, and some of them would have parasites in their body, you know, especially in that type of environment. And then they would take a leaf from a tree, and they would chew it. And you would tell that it didn't taste good. They would give you bad, you know, you put an expression on your face, it doesn't taste bad, just like we all do. And the scientist said, why would a monkey put something in its mouth that knows it doesn't taste good? Well, that's a clue. You know, most people like to eat good things, you know, ice cream, cherries, fruit. And if it tastes bad, you don't want to do it, right? There's only one way you would do it. And that is if you know somehow that has some treatment for some illness that you have. And sure enough, they found out that this particular plant, by examining the monkeys, eliminated some of their parasites which lodge in their intestinal tract. Isn't that amazing? So then what do we do? Take these leaves, bring them back to the lab, and investigate them. And this is how all these things come about. And it's not only in plants, it's also in cone shells. And believe it or not, leeches. Now I know you're all afraid of being sucked upon by leeches. Many chemicals have been derived for human use by leeches. One of the most important, I believe, is the blood coagulant, anticoagulant heparin. Is that an anticoagulant? Yep. Heparin. Heparin, or the idea of heparin, was believed to become, was based on leeches. So you see, if leeches can suck into your body and then take out its proboscis, you know, that's fine. But you're supposed to stop bleeding. But if you don't stop bleeding, then you know that the leech put something in there. And the scientists realize that, hey, this could be a good anticoagulant to help people with heart attacks or, you know, vascular problems or whatever. And sure enough, it works. So you see, by us destroying the rainforest, we're destroying future hope to eliminate drastic diseases, including cancer, diabetes, and arthritis, and a whole bunch of other illnesses. I'm going to get to that in a minute. However, see this person here? He probably represents, he's young, but probably when he gets older, he would be a shaman. What is a shaman? A shaman are the true botanists. These are the ones who know which trees do what. And they learned this from their ancestors. Okay, and it makes sense, because they're right in the middle of a pharmacy. The whole woods, the whole rainforest is a pharmacy there, okay? And these guys know it. And what's happening now is, according to his book, Medicine Quest, we've lost about 90 tribes through assimilation, through whatever other reason. Not only did we lose the tribes, we lost the knowledge, the cultural knowledge about the rainforest and the medicines that went with it. You see? So that's bad. This is why we cannot keep cutting, chopping, and digging. And of course here we see the forest on one side and American homes on the other, or Western style homes on the other. I think though, what I'm going to do though, is show you the epitome of what this picture represents. Has anyone here been to Las Vegas lately? Aha. Did any of you see this housing development lately? Look at that. Now, did you see that? You saw this particular place? What's it like looking at it in person? You were there? Was there any trees there? No. Is there any lawns there? No. What's it like there? Oh wait, this is what I'm going to do. Notice, we put those homes there. There goes biodiversity. What happened to the biodiversity? It went, whoosh, right? Stop. Why? Because we built over it. Now, this used to be desert, folks. Do we need the desert for anything? Sure we do. Do you think there's a possibility that there were medicinal plants here? Yes? Sure. What happened now? They're all gone. Why? Because we blacktopped them with pavement. Now, did anybody ever hear of the term albedo? Sounds like an Italian fellow, doesn't it? But it's not. What does albedo mean? Albedo means the natural reflection of the sunlight from the earth, okay? We know sunlight comes in and sunlight gets reflected, okay? And some of it's supposed to stay in. Otherwise, we couldn't live here. It would be freezing here, right? So some of it stays in. A lot of it's supposed to go out. But now what's happened? The desert is supposed to reflect it, right? What color was the streets here, Lucas? Yeah, what color?
Black.
Black. What does black do? Absorb light or reflect it? Absorbs it, okay? So you see, this to me is a disaster. And this is why, folks, I consider, you know what the dirtiest word in the environmental dictionary is? Every time I mention it, I gotta go wash my mouth out with soap. It's developer. Oops, I said it again. I gotta watch my language. Developer. Okay. Now, what else do you need to live in these homes? Name something. What do you need to live? Yeah, say it again.
Water.
Water. Exactly. Did you know that LA now, I think they have a water problem anyway before they start building these, you see? And by the way, I just took this picture from the Time magazine, the Earth Day Time magazine in last April 2000. So this is something relatively recent. And Lucas, you say you saw this recently? Yeah, what, they have buses here? Any stores?
Yeah, there's some stores.
How does everybody get around?
Cars.
Cars, exactly. You can imagine one car per home, what the air pollution is going to be like. Now, folks, I wouldn't live there if they paid me. You know, it doesn't look that inviting, especially to me. I'd rather live in the jungle. I'm not joking. I love the sound. Now, let's look here at another point of values here. This is something that really got to me. You know, I teach at two Columbia colleges, one downtown and one in Missouri. The one in Missouri have an extension up in Park City, which is a little bit west of Waukegan. So I drive up there, and sometimes I have my camera. I always take my camera because you never know what you're going to find. This is something I found, and I had to get it on, I had to photograph it. Now, I have my own digital camera, and I have the own software, my own color printer, my own transparencies, so it's easy. I do all this within an hour. I get everything done, printed up. What do you see here, folks? Well, this is the Prime Outlets outlet up there up the road somewhere near Gurnee. It's not in Gurnee, it's near Gurnee Mills. Over 70 designer outlet stores. Now, look at this lady. What do you see with her here? Well, we see shopping bag, shopping bag, shopping bag, shopping bag, shopping bag, shopping bag. And if you look at the clothes she's wearing, you know she's not exactly living in the poorhouse, right? Okay, now, let's go to the other extreme. Sorry to show you this. Well, I'm going to show it to you anyway. Here we see 4 children living in Africa. Now, these children are suffering from a disease called kwashiorkor. This is a disease that you get when you're weaned from your mother, generally under the age of 3. Kwashiorkor is the Ghanaian word, which means the evil that strikes the first child after the second child is born, okay? Now, you know why they have the big bellies? Yeah, why? Why do they have big bellies? Yeah, but what causes the big bellies? Beer drinkers. They got beer bellies. How come those are not beer bellies? It does have to do with malnutrition, but why? Okay, I'll tell you why. First of all, they don't get enough protein. They don't get enough plasma proteins in their blood, so then their organs begin to disintegrate, and as the organs begin to disintegrate, they produce swelling, edema. You know, it swells up because liquid's building up, and hence they get this appearance, okay? Now, every time I see this, I feel terribly sorry for these kids, because through no fault of their own, they're starving to death. The faults lay on the government of these countries. And again, folks, I don't want to blame the U.S., but I do feel that it could have helped do something with this. Because whenever we see hunger worldwide, it does something to me. Here, you know, here we have Weight Watchers. You think they got Weight Watchers there? No, probably they need an organization like Weight Gainers, right? You see? And these kind of things bother me. But this is all, again, has to do with poverty, okay? And these people are a result of the poverty, of both financial poverty, of common sense, values. Because, as I was speaking to Sarah today, of which I must say, we were speaking about Pakistan. And it just so happened Pakistan was on 60 Minutes last night. Did anybody watch it? They had a very good that Pakistan is spending millions on nuclear bombs, but yet only 1% of the Pakistani people can read. Isn't that right? Yet 99% of the Pakistanis are illiterate. What do they make? The equivalent of $16 a month or something like that? How much was it?
Yeah.
$16 a month. And something obscene when their values is, hey, let's not feed our people. It's more important we build the atomic bomb so we can attack the Indians. See? Okay? So this is another poverty of values. Okay, now what I want to do is show you two more things, and then I'm going to show you this movie, okay, on the Ndoki rainforest in Africa. I'm going to show you this. This is the first time I'm doing this with these two pictures. Well, let's talk about values. See who is. Who is he?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan, right. Okay. Again, folks, you'll be amazed at this. Who is this fellow? Yeah, how do you know that? His name's Mario Molina, a nice Mexican fellow. Now, let me put these two together. Who is more important for Chicago?
Michael Jordan.
Who? Michael Jordan? Who said Michael Jordan? Well, how many think it's Michael Jordan? Okay. Well, how many think this fellow is more important for Chicago? Raise your hand. We've got to have an opinion. You say? Good man, Luke. Good man. He is more important for Chicago. He's more important for Tennessee. He's more important for the Arctic. He's more important for Greenland. He's more important for the whole world. Why?
Because he's fighting.
What?
Well, he's trying to save nature.
How? Okay, this man is my hero. I happened to be at a meeting with him once. He won the 1995 Nobel Prize for Chemistry. Okay? And I'm happy to have my picture taken with him. And we went to a meeting because I teach at Columbia College downtown, and the chairman of the department is a chemist. And so every week they have a meeting, the American Chemical Society, and they invite us part-timers every so often. And I had the chance to meet him because I always wanted to meet him. He's my hero. His name is Mary. Was from my class, right? I think everybody alive today something. How ozone gets depleted, okay, by the CFC, the chlorofluorocarbons. He showed the equation. He worked it out up in the stratosphere, okay? Ozone gets broken down in the stratosphere by the chlorofluorocarbons. He's the one who discovered it. He discovered it with two other fellows, a fellow named Sherwood Rowland and a German fellow whose name escapes me at the moment. So the three of them won the Nobel Prize together in '95 for their work on discovering how the ozone layer gets broken up. Now, why am I showing you Michael Jordan in connection with him? Because you see, all around the world, including Israel, they know who Michael Jordan is. As a matter of fact, when I was living in Israel, we were living next door to a family, and they happened to follow sports. And my neighbor, who spoke fairly good English, and although I did speak to him in Hebrew, he was able to name the whole Bulls team. Forrest Grant and these other guys, right in the middle of Israel, okay, which is about 7,000 miles from here. So, you see, we are exporting our values all over the world. And I'm not saying that's bad, that he knows who he is, but I bet you if I showed him this picture, he would have no idea. You see? I bet you if I showed George Bush this picture, he'd have no idea. Okay? Most people don't. However, to me, he's my hero, okay? And I want you to know that. And I'm lucky enough to have met him, too. shook his hand. Not only that, I gave him my business card. So there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two things. I'm going to play this on low. And now we're going to watch this piece coming from 2020. And has to do with the rainforest, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, play. Prime time.
Prime time continues. Once again from Washington, Sam Donaldson.
We return now to our adventure to the last untouched place on Earth, and it's about to take an unexpected turn. In a remote jungle deep in the northern Congo, correspondent John Quinones already has been given a personal guide to its breathtaking beauty. But he's about to encounter the dark side of a peaceable kingdom.
You're on a deadly safari in the heart of Africa. These hunters are tracking chimpanzee just outside the limits of the Ndoki forest. Be warned that the following scenes are very graphic. The target is hit. It's an adult male taking his last breath. This is the first time this footage has been seen outside Congo. The body parts are taken to market and sold to local butchers as wild game or bushmeat. It provides income to hunters and the families who depend on them. This demand for bushmeat is strong, and though it's illegal, conservationists know that the trade can't be shut down completely.
They don't need to eat bushmeat, but they like it, and it's traditional. That includes just about every mammal that exists in this country, and especially gorillas. Gorillas are a delicacy. These people have been doing this for decades. You can't be brutal. You have to say, hey guys, look at the problem. Do you guys see fewer elephants? Do you see fewer gorillas? And they all say yes. And then you say, well, we've really got to start controlling this trade.
By some estimates, up to 10% of Congo's wildlife is being slaughtered every year, including some of Africa's most endangered species, like this baby lowland gorilla found dead in a suitcase. This one is still alive, rescued while on its way to the bushmeat market. But even if the fight to cut back on the bushmeat trade is won, conservationists know that the animals cannot survive without the rainforest. And every day, there's less and less of it. For Michael Fay, saving this forest is not just a battle, it's a war.
Most of the large blocks of forest in Africa have been divvied up in the last 20 years to logging companies. They have just been invading the forest at an unbelievable rate.
Last year, French logging companies cut down 200,000 trees in this part of Congo. The product, mahogany and plywood, most of it for export. The lumber mills run 24 hours a day here, but at least for now, they've been barred from the Ndoki forest, thanks in large part to the efforts of Michael Fay.
Let's just have one place on Earth where, we're not thinking about how much money we're going to make off of it. Let's just say, this is an amazing place, and it's the last one left. So let's save it at any cost.
In terms of what, a couple of hundred feet tall?
Yeah, it's probably, about 200 feet.
How much money is in this?
You're talking about $10,000 on the open market for this tree. Not bad.
How old is this tree, do you think?
Well, nobody really knows the ages of these trees, and we've had some dates that have been over 1,000 years old. So, a tree that takes 1,000 years to grow takes 20 minutes to cut down. People are kidding themselves when they think that they're going to ever be cutting this kind of tree down again. It won't exist.
He's so determined to keep Ndoki safe from the outside world that he's learned to fly. With the vigilance of a hawk, he watches over hundreds of miles of forest and its wildlife.
I can see some buffalo down in the river there, and I don't see any elephants.
We pass over a clearing where elephants normally gather, but today there's something terribly wrong here. This watering hole has become a killing field.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
expects an even greater massacre, so he decides to land.
That guy is probably about 6 or 7 years old. This guy is the same thing. There's 2 of them here.
There's an elephant every 10 feet.
Yeah, there's one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. I mean, just in our field of view here, there's at least 50 elephants. The farther you walk, the more you see. They're everywhere. This place is just littered with carcasses.
The killers are a local network of ivory poachers who ambush the elephants with powerful ammunition, remove their tusks, and then sell the ivory in bulk to Europe and Japan.
This was a small elephant.
Yeah, very small, which means that they're not being selective out here. It means they're just whacking any elephant they see like this.
This random slaughter of elephants, Africa's largest endangered mammal, was supposed to have ended in 1989. That was the year Congo joined 99 other countries in banning the ivory trade.
This is an ear right here.
Yeah, they cut the ears off to use for stupid things like sitting on them.
Sitting on them?
Yeah, it's a real good use of an elephant.
Within minutes, we count nearly 300 sets of remains. The biggest elephant killing field ever found.
You know, this is just a baby. If it's a male, it's probably only 3 years old, something like that. So he's given his life for about 2 pounds of ivory. He'll end up being probably reins for some tourist down in Brazzaville.
How much in dollars? In the capital, Brazzaville, a few days later, we find markets teeming with ivory sold right out in the open.
It's real ivory? It's real?
Yeah.
Not plastic?
No. Most of the customers here, we are told, are foreign tourists, mainly from Europe.
How do they remove the tusks?
Very easy. You take a big old axe and you cut the nose off, and then you just start hacking.
This one fell on its knees, it looks like.
Yeah, it's when they do a brain shot, if they hit him anywhere in the spinal column, they just drop straight down. So if you're a safari hunter, you're very proud when an elephant drops to its knees, because that means you're a good shot.
Faye is sure that the poacher's camp can't be far away, so he sets off to find it and give the poachers a taste of what he calls repression. As it turns out, the poacher's camp is just a short walk from the clearing. Government soldiers have come along for our protection.
This was breakfast or lunch.
The poachers have fled in a hurry, but the camp is littered with evidence of their work.
This is where the bullet probably grazed it, and that's why they threw it away. It probably shattered the tusk when they hit the elephant. That's a baby forest buffalo, and he's obviously not very happy. So here's the mother. That's all that's left of Mom.
With the help of the soldiers, Faye turns the poacher's campfire on the camp itself.
They can take note, and the next time, they'll do it again. And the next time you do it again. Next time you do it again. Finally, they'll understand that this place just is off limits now.
For Faye, this is just another skirmish in the war to keep the forces of destruction at bay for one more day. Without the protection of conservationists, Ndoki would surely die. But the work of Faye and his team depends on funding, which is always uncertain.
$600,000 a year to save, in my opinion, the last great wilderness in tropical Africa. And, we can't come up with the money. And that's crazy. It's insane. It's just, it's unbelievable.
85% of the rainforests that once covered the planet have now disappeared. The world cannot afford to lose the treasures of Ndoki, says Michael Faye. But once lost, they can never be regained.
It's hard work, one man trying to save the rainforest. How long will you keep going?
Well, as long as it takes. If we lost this place, if all of those animals get poached out and logging occurs, no one will ever have seen it. No one will know what it was.
The $600,000 Michael Fay refers to is the annual cost of maintaining the field project in the Andoki rainforest. For more information on the work, you can contact the Wildlife Conservation Society at the Bronx Zoo in New York City.
Okay, now, needless that they know that the other part they're going to talk about is just the opposite. You know what follows this? The second trial of O.J. Simpson on the exact same tape. Now, what do we see here? We see an irony. Here we see the Andoki rainforest, which to me is much more valuable than the O.J. Simpson trial's aftermath, right? What do they need here? He said, what, $500,000 to help save the Andoki forest? And how much was spent in the O.J. Simpson trial? $7 million, right? But that was just the trial. Now, the second trial, right? He was convicted in the wrongful suit, right? Was it the wrongful death suit, or whatever you want to call it? Okay, now watch. We're going to play that a little bit, and you see the irony of this.
Daniel Petrocelli shows Cynthia McFadden how the evidence lined up in his favor in the O.J. Simpson civil case.
Here's an overlay of the shoe print, and as you can see, it matches perfectly.
The winning strategy.
Okay, now we'll go this for a few minutes. You see the point I'm trying to make? You see a little irony there? Which is more important, the rainforest or the O.J. Simpson thing? Anybody want to say?
Piece of staff. Leon Panetti.
And a PI.
Okay.
He may well be remembered as the lawyer who did what a team of Los Angeles County prosecutors couldn't do, win a verdict against Simpson to the tune of $33 million. Tonight, correspondent Cynthia McFadden gets us an inside look at how he did it.
I'm going to just show you this in a few minutes.
This was the public moment Daniel Petrocelli had worked so hard for. Victory. But the path to that victory had remained private until now.
So tell me where you're taking me.
We are on the 5th floor of Mitchell Silverberg and Nutt, and this was the very first place where we began to collect all of the evidence.
So the war room, here we are.
And this
oh
is
my gosh.
the war room.
This is the first time anyone outside Petrocelli's team has been permitted inside this room. Before all the ammunition used against O.J. Simpson was sent off to the warehouse, Petrocelli agreed to show us around.
Tell me what I'm looking at, Dan.
You're looking at the infamous Harry Skull photo of O.J. Simpson walking in the end zone at Rick Stadium on September 26, 1993. At the time Mr. Skull took this photo, little did he know how important of a photograph that would become. What I told the jury in closing argument was that this shoe worn by Mr. Simpson left this bloody shoe print that you see in these photographs. And here's an overlay of the shoe print. And as you can see, it matches perfectly. And that shoe made that shoe print on the evening of June 12th.
Okay, now, what's the point I'm trying to make here? Does anybody know? What's the point between the O.J. Simpson thing and then the part we just saw about the Andoki rainforest with Michael Fay? Somebody should know. Exactly. Instead of real issues. However, you notice the O.J. Simpson trial intrigued the whole U.S. for a year and a half. The cameras, the lawyers, everything, right? Something got out of hand, the lawyers got up in arms, they threatened to even fine the lawyers in the case. I mean, you know, to me, it doesn't say much for the judicial system. You know, I mean, my opinion of the judicial system was not far above absolute zero, but after the O.J. Simpson trial, of course, I'm sorry to say, it went way down even more. So, you see the ironies here? So, this is another example of poverty of values. Do you see that? Poverty of common sense. In your own eyes, wouldn't the Andoki forest be more important? Yes, but what do we have in the Indoki forest? We have biodiversity. You hear my friend talking here? Okay? We have the biodiversity of the birds, the bees, the bacteria, everything. And all these help sustain life. Whereas we see things like this, they're taking all the resources from areas that should be covered to those which absolutely are just pure nonsense, like the O.J. Simpson trial, you know? This is probably one of the biggest trials in the century, or they made it the biggest trial. You know, when to me, it's just the nothing, really. I mean, sure, it sounded interesting because this is where our mentality is. You understand? Does that make sense? So our mentality is there. Our mentality should be in places like the Indoki rainforest. Now, one more thing before I'll ask questions. I have here a chart. Well, actually, I'm going to show you two charts. This was taken from the book, The Diversity of Life by Edwin O. Wilson. And what I have done here, I have taken drugs on the left here. These are drugs. These are the plants that they come from, and those are the uses of those drugs. Okay? Then notice, this is take atropine. Okay, it comes from a plant. It's anticholinergic. It has to do with acetylcholine, okay? It disrupts the acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. Here we have cocaine. I know you hear about cocaine, but it's a local anesthetic. Codeine comes from the opium. That's an analgesic, anti-pain. Colchicine. This is what they use in chemotherapy, okay? To stop the multiplication of the spindle fibers. By the way, now you know what spindle fibers are, right? Those of you in my class, right? You know too, Jeremy, right? All right, the spindle fibers, they help the cells divide. You break the spindle fibers, you don't have division of the cells. Simple as that. Okay, then we have L-DOPA. That helps Parkinson's disease, you see? Look at all this stuff. Gossypols, a male contraceptive. Indocene, N-oxide, comes from this organism here. Anti-cancer, leukemia. Let's go down to Taxol, the account of the Pacific yew tree, especially good against ovarian cancer. Let's take one of my favorites, the rosy periwinkle, which is that one there and that one there, okay? And this one here. It has two major drugs, vinblastine and vincristine. This is why I like to use this as a symbol of biodiversity. We see hope and life here. You see that? So, and if we keep cutting and chopping and digging down the trees, we're not going to have any biodiversity left. Now, I'm going to show you just two more pictures, and then you can ask questions. I have here another chart. This was taken from the book, The Medicine Quest, and this was from the index. And these are all substances and organisms which come from products found in the rainforest which are used to treat human illnesses. Isn't that amazing? Including arthritis, diabetes, cancer, a whole bunch of illnesses. And yet, if we keep cutting these down because of our stupid values, when we consider things like this O.J. Simpson thing to be the end of it all, you know, then maybe we don't belong. We don't deserve to be cured from this, right? Okay, you see what I'm driving at? And here, by the way, is another page which deals with more chemicals found, including AZT, okay? And what do we use AZT for? AIDS, okay? All right, now, one more picture and then we'll have questions. Here is by far something that just comes from a local paper just a few months ago that I think, too, we should be concerned with. Here, another crisis looms in Ethiopia. What do you say about that, folks? Is that good? I don't think so. Again, we're seeing this now. Ethiopia. The Ethiopians were starving again. You can call it a famine, a crisis, anything you want. But unfortunately, it's back in the news, at least it was a few weeks ago. Okay, now, other than that, I have nothing else to say, unless you have any questions. But I like my sound effects. They're nice, aren't they? Okay, that represents biodiversity. Okay, any questions, comments, complaints, anything? Yes, go ahead, Samantha.
How long did it take for that disaster?
For the desert, I think it started over 30 years.
So why would there still be boats?
It's a good Well, what happens, good point. Why would the boats just be sitting there? I don't know. That's a good question. Well, by the way, too, the people who live around here are getting throat cancer. Why? Because there's a lot of heavy metals and things, toxins in the sand, and when it evaporates, it blows, and the people breathe it in, and it winds up in their throats. Isn't this an amazing picture? It's incredible. And this is why I put it here. You see, I want to show you good stuff. Stuff that you've never seen before, but super ridiculous stuff. Isn't this insane? Right? By the way, you don't hear any of the politicians talking about this stuff. Right? What do they talk about? Here again, we got value. Drugs for the elderly. Less taxes. More taxes. Gasoline. Got to get oil up in the Arctic. I mean, really, the most important things are survival. And now when they would put their brains together, they say, you know, we have to prevent these things. How are we going to do that and still keep a high standard of living? And the answer is to maybe look for other sources of energy, right? Do we need to grow all this cotton? And look what you get from growing cotton. You get a desert, you see? And so we have alternatives if we know how to use them. If we would have a contest maybe to have people pay them $100,000 if they can come up with an idea how to make a car that runs, you know, without any gas or something like this that works. And now we do have things like solar energy, which run on solar panels. We don't need any electricity. Every house can have their own solar power plant. You know what the biggest waste of space is in America or anywhere on the planet? It's rooftops. The most. Is that amazing? Windows. And the windows are papers. That's incredible. You don't need all this stuff. Questions. I enjoy asking them. Any other? Maybe they have find minerals and stuff. It's a good question. Yeah, why make it go to waste? Given lemon? That's an old saying. Good point. Idea. About poverty. We have a store here in the ocean. All they do is cut shop in this area. That will break loose because they're paying, who knows, maybe up to half of. I don't know how much. Thought about it. If they said, hey, right? Can you imagine that happening here? Wealthy people, the forest to the right, and it's already almost depleted. You see, so you think. Anything about this, and you saw a lot of. Any other comments? Isn't this show how stupid we are? Who really gained from it? Okay. All right. Other questions, comments? Okay, well, folks, and as you can just tell you this about